They will see it. So it's good to start with the dance.
Yeah. Positive vibes.
Yes. Definitely. Yes, I think we started.
Great.
So thank you everybody for joining us on YouTube today. And thank you for watching. Welcome everybody and listening to us. So before we start, I just wanted to point out that you can leave your questions and thoughts in the comments below. So because the cool part from the live session is that we can interact with you. So if you have questions or remark or want to know, you can ask us anything. We're talking today about a working group that I'm leading from the Center for Ocean Policy and Economics on bullying and sexual assault and harassment in the maritime sector. And I'm having this talk today with Miss Pam Kern. So maybe she can quickly introduce herself to you.
Yeah.
Hi, Pam.
Hi. Thanks, Eva. So I'm Pam Kern. I am also part of the COPE working group, and my passion for the group is to be an agent of change to improve the life of the seafarer, but with genuine passion because I also was a former seafarer. A little story about myself and my career trajectory as a seafarer to psychotherapist. I started out on cruise ships and I worked in what we call the complaint department, which was guest relations, where we heard all the comments, complaints, even had to deal with tragedies. And I started to notice over the years, my team always became, towards the middle to end of their contract, very tired. So I would experiment with interventions to help mitigate fatigue. And some of the interventions had really big impact. So I wanted to go back to school to study human behavior in the workplace. So I left, I went to Columbia to get my degree. I stayed for a little while working in an employee assistance program after grad school, but then ultimately went back to ships to practice what I learned. And now I am a psychotherapist, specifically within trauma, and I design prevention and intervention programs, specifically in maritime for seafarers, to kind of bridge the gap between practice and policy and what mental health, looks like in maritime. So it's just a little bit of what I do.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's also very cool that you're part of our working group and doing this together with us, because one of the things we did was we worked on an IMO model course on personal safety and social responsibility. And Pam also provided her expertise for that. So she was adding language on psychological safety and trauma and trauma response. So that was really great and glad to have you today. So so let's start, because I think it would be really nice if you could tell us something about your perspective, specifically as a seafarer who also now is a psychotherapist. So what would you like to share?
How much time do we have?
Well,
way over time.
Well, we're doing this every 2 weeks, so I think that's the good thing. We can keep it like short and sweet. So about 20 minutes. So you can tell us everything you like, because it's YouTube. We can do this.
All right, let's go. Let's dive right in. So in my practice as a psychotherapist, I often hear clients say, I didn't feel safe. I don't feel safe. And if you're listening and you are a seafarer, can you remember a time that you said on board to yourself or to somebody else, I just don't feel safe? Now, if you did or you didn't, please leave it in the comments and Ava will pick it up and then we'll discuss it just in a few more moments. But safety is really important, and how to have a psychological safe environment. So let's break it down. Psychological safety can mean different things to different people based upon culture, our own life experiences, and just in general, how you conceptualize what's safe. because we all come from different backgrounds. So feeling safe at work is about taking risk without the fear of repercussions when you speak up. You can share your ideas very safely and comfortably. And so you don't feel that you're going to have negative consequences. You don't feel that you're going to be looked at as stupid. It's a safe environment. But work is a relationship. And in any relationship, you have to feel safe. So if you're in a personal relationship, safety is really important, but work is also that relationship. So when you're at work, the question I always ask, would you marry your work? Or would you divorce your work? Do you feel safe in it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I don't see much. So I got one response from Ali. Hi. I also hope we have a great time. But I think that's a great question. I think it's also really interesting to look at the relationship like in the working environment, because I think you're totally right. And I was a seafarer also myself. So I have many examples where I would just dare to speak up also to the captain or to the chief engineer to say, okay, I don't think this is okay, or ask a question also. That's also, I think, safety. So people just gave me the feeling that I could ask anything, like stupid questions don't exist, they would say to me when I was like a trainee. And that made me feel safe enough to just ask anything. Also the things that I thought, well, maybe I should know this, I don't know. But that's what you meant, right?
Right. And if you felt safe to ask the question, you feel valued, you feel trust. And I realize on ships, if you answered that question, no, I don't feel safe in my environment on board, to cut that relationship is really hard. You're in a contained environment and your pay might support your internal family, your external family, your neighborhood, your community. So it's a little different, but still the value of the relationship is the same. If you feel valued, you feel trust, you're going to tend to give your best self. You feel that it's worth it and you're going to invest yourself. But where does that psychological safety environment come from? Biggest question. And it comes from the top, from the captain, and it trickles its way down. So there's lots of research to show that environments are created at the top, and it's a practice. It's not a buzzword. So having a captain, a chief officer, a chief engineer to promote this, it trickles down and creates the environment on board. And that I have seen over and over again. So as we know, Ava, as seafarers, how many times have we gone on a ship and we know who the captain or chief officer is, and we're like, when's his repat date? When's her repat date? Because you know the environment you're walking into, or or you're counting down to when the relief comes, and that alone feels safe. That person is coming back.
It will end. Yes.
Or something really bad is finally going to end, and then you have the relief. And do you remember when that day happens, when that changeover, and like the whole environment on the ship shifts. And it's quite incredible. And that's what I'm talking about, the psychological safety. I do get questions, well, what is psychological safety? What is it not? And the best way to answer that question, what psychological safety is not, is it's not always being nice and always agreeing. It's about being productive in a disagreement without a hot exchange of words. You're wrong, there's going to be consequences, you're going to be blacklisted, you're going to get the worst jobs on board. It creates the environment that anyone can speak up openly. And it's not a replacement for the word trust either. It's a practice that's necessary to survive in our current climate. I don't know if you've ever heard of the word called VUCA, VUCA. It is short for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And ships are in a VUCA environment where things happen so fast. There's a lot of volatility, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of complexity. There's faster turnarounds, more paperwork, more inspections. So how can we use a practice like psychological safety to keep up, with the times?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a personal story with psychological safety where I was on board and I disagreed with my boss, who was the hotel director, on how one of my staff was disciplined. Basically, she was given a final warning, which I disagreed with. And I was told by this very harsh hotel director that that's a final answer, that I had no recourse. And I did have recourse. I could go to the captain, which I did, whom the captain agreed with me. But then I had to face the uncertainty of the repercussions of my boss, the hotel director, who told me not to do that. No psychological safety at all. With the captain, yes, but not with the hotel director. And that environment, although I had sailed from 1996 to 2012, anybody can put in the chat box to let us know, does that exist on your ship today, or was that your experience? Because I am almost confident that still exists today. Maritime is deeply rooted in tradition, and sometimes things are hard to change. But in order to keep up with the times, we need to create psychological safety as part of a practice, and create awareness.
Yes, and that's a good question you ask, and I hope that even if people watch this later, they will respond, and it will not be, you can also do it anonymously maybe, or just make a little remark. But it's good that we are talking about this, because I think you're totally right. It's about being aware of what is happening and what is going on and what is normal and what is not normal in some environments, and then doing something. And I think that we are now focusing first on the education part. I think that's the really great thing. And as you can, I forgot to mention, but we are also providing the PSSR course online on Nemo. That's the online education tool that Northeast Maritime Institute has. So that's awesome. And we are providing that for all seafarers. So yeah, just keep on following us if you want to know more about that. And we are developing that also together with Pam, of course, using all the expertise from all the people within our group. But yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think we can talk about this maybe a little more, because but there's so much to focus on. So maybe we can focus on communication, because what can you do yourself? And I see comments from Patty, who is also watching, who was doing the former episodes with us. Thank you,
awesome.
Patty, for watching. And she liked that Pam highlighted what psychological safety is not. Yes, so that's a good one. Just explain what it means is a really good idea. So what can people do? Like if they're watching this and want to do something about it or start something.
Yeah, exactly. Let's put the words into practice. I'm going to start off with awareness. So awareness, how many people have ever experienced a traumatic event in your life? You can put it anonymously, or we won't say your name, raise your hand. I certainly have. And the experience that you have in all your life experiences create kind of an imprint of how you think and who you are. And our past experiences, past trauma shows up at work. It might determine your own psychological safety or your own psychological, let's say, vulnerabilities, what kind of triggers you, because something from the past can certainly trigger us in the present, and not necessarily the same situation, but a feeling. So here's an example of psychological safety in play: uncertainty. So the captain might say to you, let's talk after departure. And you're like, okay, departure is 4 hours from now. And your brain immediately jumps to assuming the worst. Maybe in your past, somebody had said something like really bad news, but they made you wait a long time. So that uncertain feeling from the past is brought into the present. And then you're left with like, am I getting bad news? And am I not? So it's being aware of how we communicate to people to remove uncertainty. So we've got more psychological safety being maybe more concrete and specific. So let's reword it. I need to speak with you after departure, but it's just about, certain suggestions that we need to make for the next itinerary. So you actually filled in the gaps, removing the uncertainty and creating more psychological safety. Another suggestion could be,
and can you then, because that says something for the leader in this like role play, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But you can, so there's a big role for the leader, for the one that is higher in the hierarchy. But I think maybe there's also a role for the person who is experiencing that, right? If you know that you feel anxious about waiting for some news, you can say, is it bad news, or can I know what it is about? Can I just know what we are going to talk about? That's maybe also an idea.
You can flip the script, if you will. But there has to be an environment of psychological safety for the person to say, can you let me know what it's about, without, maybe fear of repercussions. But it's a two-way street. You could also put it into practice by being more culturally responsive. I call it culturally responsive care. So there's a quote by Anise Nin that says, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Maybe with our life experiences, we kind of place judgment on, others or other situations where we say, he just can't cope. But let's take it a step further with awareness and maybe ask why he or she can't cope. Let's change kind of the approach to creating awareness that what we can do to create more psychological safety, to change behavior. And of course, that will take time, but it is something possible to do. Another suggestion is that if you've got groups on board that, so for instance, on cruise ships, we had a lot of Filipinos, Indians, and we started doing discussion groups or focus groups in their language. So it's amazing when you shift from, English as your second language to the first language, that when you're introducing new concepts, but in a familiar language, that has a really powerful impact. So that kind of leads me to the communication part of it on maybe barriers, if you will, the stigma of speaking up on board, because we know on ships that some cultures on ships that you always have to appear strong and that you can't appear weak. And I had one seafarer tell me that, oh no, ma'am, I can't speak up because I will look weak in my faith. So you kind of have this stigma, the cultural stigma, you've got the stigma at home, and maybe a religious-based stigma.
Maybe a gender-based stigma?
Yeah, could be gender-based, exactly. Maybe I'm the only female on board, and so I can't cry.
Yeah, also maybe, yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's not a double-edged sword. It's almost like a triple-edged sword, and it's hard. So how to be an agent of change to undo stigma, and it really comes from the top. And then people will slowly start to realize, okay, this is a safe environment to do, but it really has to start from the top and, trickle, its way down. But communication reduces uncertainty, rephrasing things, and communicating that it's okay to fail in your environment and teach how to respond. Because when people know they've made a mistake, they usually go one of two ways. They'll either immediately try to cover it up, or they'll immediately be apologetic and like, okay, let me fix it. But we want to have a place that's safe to say, I made a mistake, so we're not covering up mistakes.
Yeah, that's also safety, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. From the small administration, things to, big things. Those are vital when it comes to communication with psychological safety. But psychological safety can do a lot as a practice. It helps with engagement, keeping people committed because they feel valued. They feel, that they're worth it. They feel performance. And there's so much research to back that up, that if an employee feels valued, they feel part of the process and part of the solution, then that return happens aboard the ship and for the company's bottom line. It helps with problem solving. It helps with, overall that the ship is running at its optimal level. And just remember, think about the time when you were on board or even, on land-based, where you weren't able to speak up. And if you did leave a comment in the chat box, I would love to hear about it, or any other comments, Eva, that people have brought forward.
Well, it's kind of quiet, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that you told us super very valuable things to know. And I think people also learned a lot from what you said, and you gave us some really good advice as what we can do right now and what you can start with. And so thank you very much for that. And thank you also for being here tonight with us. So I don't know do you have some last thing you want people to just know, to take away if they watch this? Or
that starting something new can be scary. Humans in general don't like change because it feels uncertain or unfamiliar. We tend as humans to stay in our own routines. So experimenting with this practice of psychological safety, start in small, what I call small sizes or small bites, for big impact. Just maybe make one shift and then see where it goes. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Just starting one thing can lead into something else, but it's of course taking that first step, which is of course the hardest. And Ava, you probably know on ships is like, we've always done things the same way. Or have you ever heard the expression, yeah, but we've always done it this way. We don't have to change. Why do we have to change?
Yes, and that's quite dangerous if you think of it, to stay in the safety the language
safety of the routine. Correct.
And I just have to keep thinking in my mind about food while you said that. So I live in the Netherlands. We have a commercial where they say you don't have to change your whole, like, eating healthy food stuff. You can start very, very small with just drinking an extra glass of water instead of drinking a soda with a lot of sugar in it or something. And I think that's the same for this, right? And in the end, it's just taking care of yourself and others, and to make sure that everybody's happy and healthy in the end. And I think if you're doing that, then you're taking care of everything. You're providing a more safe environment. It will be better for your company. It will be better for all of your employees, for the families of your employees, for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on ships though, because you're in a contained environment, that we tend to have this tunnel vision, if you will, that and sometimes you haven't been outside for days, maybe a week. So the routine, you kind of forget the outside world. So it's kind of recentering back again that, we can provide psychological safety. We can change things up, but we have to kind of get out of that routine and make a new routine. But I'm excited to see where it goes, because psychological safety is definitely a practice that has been proven to work, and it improves the overall wellness of everybody on board.
Yes. So thank you so much for telling us about that. Yes. And I think we have to end this session for now, but we will have one in 2 weeks with maybe you or maybe some other subject matter expert from our working group. And we have so many like super nice and very smart and very cool people on board, and a super diverse group also. So if you're watching this and if you like to know more about this group, just give us a shout out or DM us on social media or even in the comments so we can let you know.
Great.
So for now, just thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
And also, of course, yes, Pam, thank you. And thank you for watching, and seeing you the next time. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for attending.
Bye-bye.
Bye.